Hi everyone and welcome back to the fantasyfootballfix.com YouTube channel with me, Tom Campbell, for another Elite 11 team reveal. Guys, ahead of game week 17, we've got Andrew Neave back on the channel to preview the festive fixtures. So without further ado, guys, let's get right into it. Guys, welcome back to the channel. And Andrew, welcome back to yourself as well, mate. It's been a little while since we've had you on the channel. How have you been getting on, mate? And let's get your thoughts straight away on this new chip as well. Let's get straight into the nitty gritty.
I'm good, thanks, Tom. It's always good to chat after a row. So, yeah, happy to be on. And actually, the first I did 2 green arrows in a row this season, which is
Beautiful.
pretty nuts. Come game
Yeah.
16, it's really been red, green, red, green, red, green. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, quite happy to climb up about 500,000 in the last 2 game weeks. So, and made a big decision last week, which we'll obviously have a look at too. So it kind of feels like it's trending in the right direction at the moment. And yeah, like you say, the new chip too is the X-Man chip, like it's been fondly referred to many times. And
Yeah.
I'm good.
Mm-hmm. Oh, cool. Yeah.
Halfway through the season, you know, as fantasy managers, we obviously, it's a game of strategy and a game of preparation and planning, and it felt a bit weird not having all of that information up front.
Sure.
But it does open up a big opportunity, and especially for those like myself who've not quite had the start that they obviously would have wanted.
Sure.
And the fact that we don't have quite as many disruptions this season, so the opportunity is for more sort of double chances to fly up the ranks a little bit more with proper preparation. It's been a nice.
Yeah, me too. I think it's cool. It's nice to have something new and something exciting. It felt like the game probably needed a little injection there of something fresh, and it certainly provided that. So, look, I mean, we're just looking here, Andrew. You've had 7 top 10k finishes overall. You've had 5 in the top 5k, 1 in the top 1k. Like, yes, I can see that your overall rank probably isn't where you'd want it to be just prior to Christmas, but there's still loads of the season left. You've only used 1 chip. You've got 6.3 million in the bank. It feels like there's still a huge opportunity to make sort of divergence with other FPL managers, right? And that's what it's going to take as we approach the festive fixtures and beyond, right? To make that surge up the rankings.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to take a bit of luck, especially with this new chip. I mean, obviously the opportunities are there if you can pick the right teams that obviously score more points by winning games against teams that are higher up in the league than them,
Sure.
five or higher in the league. So I think it doesn't happen too often. I think we need to kind of, keep our feet on the ground there. And obviously, as fantasy managers, we want to chase the big points and take those risks so that we can get the bigger points. I think it's just going to be a case of, I think so much is going to change. It's such a complex chip, and so much is going to change before we can first of all play it, because we can only play it from game week 24. It obviously makes sense to play it in a double game week to take advantage of 4 games across the 3 game weeks that it'll be active for you.
Yeah, it does.
And I think my approach to it is just going to be, I think the managers who get the most out of this chip are going to be the ones who can adapt quickly and have a few transfers up the sleeve, so they don't necessarily have to stick with the same /team for all 3 of those game weeks, because we can change them during the 3 game week period that the chip is active, and basically reacting to where those teams are in the league. It's almost like we're going to be sitting there as traders on the New York Stock Exchange floor, looking at this table and going, okay, buy, or sell, depending on where those teams are and which ones you want to perhaps try and take advantage of.
Yeah, I concur. And that's exciting, right? Especially as people who take the game seriously, to be able to have nuance and be able to react to that. It's going to be exciting. And guys, I should say, of course, fantasyfootballfix.com will have you covered in terms of all of the stats that will help you try and unravel when it's best to deploy and use this chip. I've been taking a look at a lot of the team metrics actually over the course of the last week or so in prep for this video and for the upcoming fixtures, and it's quite interesting actually to start looking at teams as a collective, actually, in terms of the amount of points that they've accrued so far, and actually seeing whether or not there's something in that. So I'd encourage folks to head over to fantasyfootballfix.com, take a look at the stats sandbox, and encourage you to get amongst it over there. Andrew, that's some great thoughts. Just in terms of your season overall then, is the aspiration still the same? Are we still pretty chill at this stage, or are you having to react to what has been a slower start than you would have hoped for? What's the plan and what's the hope for the rest of the campaign?
Yeah, look, the aim is always top 10k. I think, given how the season has started this year, I think I'm going to definitely need a little bit of luck this season to get there. Sitting at about the 800k mark now. I think the fact that this particular chip has arrived has given me a little bit more hope, in the sense that there is that opportunity now to make big gains if you get it right and prepare enough for it.
Yeah,
which is always where those sort of better managers have done well in deploying a strategy around those double game weeks and blanks at the end of the season. So I'm kind of hoping that I can get that right and make the gains to compensate for what's been a bit of a slow start.
Yeah, and look, I mean, we're taking a look there on the right hand side of the slide, Andrew. You're sixth in the elite league, right? It still feels relatively, comparatively grouped, I would say. It doesn't feel like there's massive swings already over the course of 16 game weeks. Not an insignificant period of the season, and so I just wonder whether or not that gives more hope as well, that people can. Who's to say the next 16 couldn't be a complete reversal, right? As well.
No, exactly. I mean, those managers that are sitting in a really good position at the moment are those ones that recognize the fact that it'd be a good strategy getting rid of Haaland. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I was one of those who kept hold of him for far too long, mm-hmm. and a bit of a spoiler alert for the chat going forward. But I finally got rid of Haaland and feel a lot better for it, and that's why I've got 6.3 million sitting there in the bank.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, we'll get onto that, and it's a nice segue, and it's been so difficult, hasn't it, to think about removing Haaland. I think a lot of us took longer to get there, but what is it now? One win in 11, I think, for City. Now there comes a point, right, where we all have to make that move. Anyway, that's a nice segue, Andrew. Good thoughts about the chip. Nice encouraging thoughts to have some positivity around the chip going into next year and the remainder of the season, of course. So let's take a look at how you played out in game week 16. Okay, so I think what I noticed straight away here, and Andrew, let's go straight into the defence here and talk around the absolute haul that was from Mr. Hall as well. 15 points there, sitting there. What a lovely return for him. Let's talk around that defensive group to start with Andrew. How's that defence shaping up for you as we look forward into game week 17 and beyond?
Particular weekend, it's going to need sorting out going forward, though. Quite happy with Hall. Quite happy with Robinson. Konsa is he's kind of a 2-point merchant. Villa just can't keep clean sheets. So,
they can't. It's really annoying.
I'd be quite happy moving him on, but it's the two players that I've.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I mean, I was in Paris this past weekend and sort of keeping touch on the games. And I think it was like the 87th minute of the game, he'd still had a clean sheet. So, yeah, I was really disappointed back into it after the game and seeing that.
Yeah, it's been tough, hasn't it? The defensive options, and I think when we come on to look at the stats in a little bit on the video, we'll look at expected goals conceded, and there are some teams sticking out there, but they're all still averaging more than a goal a game conceded, right? In terms of expected goals conceded, to finding those clean sheets. Goodness me, it's been difficult, hasn't it? Let's talk about the midfield, Andrew. The captaincy, you went for Cole Palmer over Mo Salah. Was that a straightforward choice for you, or one that you agonised over?
As one I agonised over, it was a 50-50. he was tough. Brentford still managed to outscore him.
It's a weird one, isn't it? I do wonder whether or not there's a school of thought where you pick a captain for the season, and that is your captain, and you just continue to roll the same team. Maybe that takes the romance out of the game. Not something that I'm ever going to advocate for, but I do wonder whether or not that would minimise the pain. And guys, apologies if you lost the audio there just for a few minutes. I've had some technical difficulties this evening, but hopefully you guys are still picking up Andrew's thoughts then as well. Just going back to the defence as well, Robinson picking their 6. Now, to the uninitiated, that could just look like a run-of-the-mill clean sheet. It was anything but, wasn't it, for Anthony Robinson away at Anfield? Looks a bit of a player, right, Andrew, from FPL options and beyond. You've got to be pretty happy with Robinson continuing to be part of the team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's quickly becoming one of my favorite players this season. He's bailed me out a few times. I've had him come off the bench with returns, and they haven't been clean sheet returns. They've actually been assists. And obviously picking up 2 this past weekend was fantastic and bailed me out a bit there, because I had started with Greaves. He actually came in as a sub off the bench there. And just going back to the defense and looking forward, it's those 2 players on the bench that I need to be sorting out with Greaves and Vandenberg. And Greaves will be the first one I've got to look at, just simply because he seems to have lost his spot. Up until this past game week, I had Haaland in the side, which is why that defense is really the bare bones in terms of the amount of money that I've spent. It didn't work out. I think one of the hardest things for us, for FPL managers to do, is kind of admit when they've got it wrong, or the decision making hasn't quite been what they were hoping it would be. And I kind of got to that point last week with Haaland and had to go, okay, like, I've got to admit defeat here. I need to move him on and start looking at being a little bit more pragmatic, and perhaps not making huge gains every week, but just start chipping away and building up a few more green arrows in a row.
Yeah, I understand. Let's just talk strategy on that just briefly, Andrew, rather than fixating on game week 16. Just not to make it about myself completely, but I felt like I did something similar a few game weeks ago as well. I had to bring the bad man in to stop him from hurting me in Mo Salah, and actually took a -12 to get him in. Not something I think I've done in several seasons, but it's paid off in spades since then. So I just wonder whether or not that kind of take your medicine to, make a seismic change in your team, we need to be more prepared to do as FPL managers, and like I say, more accepting of sometimes you do need to rip the band-aid off and actually do something pretty significant. Would you agree, or do you think it's actually still the best strategy is to do that kind of softly and slowly approach?
I think we need to not be stubborn, essentially. I think every season where I haven't done well, bar last season, which is a bit of an anomaly with so many injuries, just a really weird one. Every season besides that where I haven't really done very well have been seasons where I've been just too stubborn on players. And I'd started that with Haaland this season. So I'm glad now that I've recognized the fact that I've made those mistakes in the past, and have gone, okay, well, let me swallow a bit of that pride and go, look, he is the obvious choice in order to get rid of, or Salah is the obvious choice to bring in. So just bring him in, even if it looks as if everyone else has him. I mean, Isak was one of them. I sold Haaland this game week for Isak. And obviously, if you're on social media and looking at what other managers are doing, there's, constant updates on how well Isak has done for them. And it does feel like everyone owns him. But I went in and had a look, and I think when I bought him, he was about 24% owned or something. So it's a lot lower than you think. And if he returns, you're getting all those points, without sounding too sort of stupid about it. So I think it's just about trying to be a little less stubborn and going with the obvious, even if it does sound like that's a little bit boring and what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, no, I do concur, and that social media bubble can feel ubiquitous, can't it? But it's clearly not. You're talking about 24% ownership. There's 76% that don't, right? So it's going to be
Absolutely.
yeah, it's going to. Isak's still a painful one as well for me to talk about, having had the Eddie Howe, and I trusted him. That was my error there in terms of transferring him out, and he's hurt me ever since. So I will try and reverse that stubbornness and bring him back in due course. Of Andrew as well. Let's just talk about forwards briefly. So maybe not Isak, but I'm intrigued by these other two of João Pedro and Wissa there for Brentford. You've got an awful lot of money swimming around in the bank now, Andrew. Are we happy with that front three complement, and you're going to be focusing on the defence? Is that how you feel right now?
Yeah, not 100% happy with it, but it needs less worrying about than my defense does. I think with João Pedro and Vissa, I'm quite happy having them in for the next couple of game weeks. I've got him in because of his home form. I was one of the sort of early adopters on him and got him in for that. He had a run of 3 home games, which were really nice on the fixture ticker and
Yeah.
returned really well in all 3 of them. So he's kind of, without him, I would have been a lot worse off at this stage. They do now run into a really bad run of fixtures. The next 2 aren't too bad for them. He's got Forest at home this game week, and I'd probably end up keeping him for that one. I think, Brentford at home can
Yeah,
score
formidable.
against anyone, really. So quite happy having him there. João Pedro has been very disappointing, to be perfectly honest. It's just his price point there that I'm quite happy having him, just simply because he can add value just in terms of the money that you're able to spend elsewhere. I think
Yeah.
Raul's obviously going to be a popular pick going forward just because of the fixture run that Fulham have, and
Yeah.
Fulham do look really good. So if I had to choose now, I would probably rather have Raul in there than João Pedro, just from a fixtures point of view, and just being able to, I guess, expect points of Fulham as opposed to Brighton. I'm never really sure with Brighton at the moment
No.
which team's going to kind of rock up. I don't. Yeah, they're very sort of topsy turvy at the moment.
I think they're better with Welbeck in the team as well.
Mm.
I think there's certainly an observation that I've talked about on this channel with various of you guys, actually. So that could be something. I did wonder whether or not you bring up Nicholas Jackson, Andrew, as well. I know you and I have talked about him throughout the course of the early part of the season. I know you were a big advocate for him and pretty bullish on him earlier on. Look, Chelsea have got great fixtures, as we're going to talk around as well. Any thought to look double attacking options for Chelsea sort of over the Christmas fixtures? Would he be of interest as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, what I'm trying to figure out at the moment is, first off, I'm going to spend a few million in the defense. I'm lacking Arsenal at the moment.
Yeah.
I got rid of Raya 2 or 3 game weeks ago for Sanchez to allow for more money to be able to keep Haaland, essentially.
Oh, I see.
I've obviously recognized that isn't quite going to work and kicking myself for it. So I need to get some Arsenal defense in, and they are looking a lot more like the Arsenal of last season in terms of, shutting up shop at the back. So that, I think, first and foremost is what I need to sort out, and Greaves will have to go for one of them. So I need to be spending a minimum of 2 million there.
Mm-hmm.
I will still have 4 million plus to spend. So it's whether I decide to go up from Rogers or go up from Avissa to the likes of Jackson. But I like the thought of having Jackson and Isak together, because not many managers have both.
No.
I think a fair few managers, obviously, at the moment have either Isak or Jackson or Cunha. So I quite like the idea of having both of those, and it won't be happening this game week, but definitely having a look at that option going forward in the next few.
Yeah, interesting. We're going to see how that plays out, and that leads us nicely on to how the team shapes up for game week 17. Okay, so I didn't mention Ahmad on the last slide very deliberately. He was sitting on the bench with a bit of a haul. I didn't want to kick you whilst you were down, Andrew. I guess I just have by mentioning it there, so apologies for that. But you've got to feel pretty sweet to have him in the team already, and everyone's going to be looking at this guy with a lot of interest with his price point. You're a Man United fan, Andrew. Talk to me about Amad Diallo.
Yeah, I bought him in 2 game weeks ago. The first game was the United game against Forest, which they lost. He got me an assist in that game. I think it was 5 points, which is, really happy for. I think I spent 4.9 million on him. He's probably about 5.2, 5.3 now. Unfortunately, benched his 13 points this game week. That would have been an extra, 200,000 places overall if I'd kind of started him there. So, yeah, a bit annoying, but he's obviously someone that a lot of people are going to be jumping on. He's playing that more advanced position for United, and the reason I got him in 2 games ago, first of all, obviously because was such a great price. He was only 4.9 when I bought him there, but also just because there does seem to be that upward trend with United at the moment, and the guy's starting to figure out what it is that Amarim wants from his team. And he did start Ahmed out sort of more of as a wing back. He's been playing a little bit more of a 10 role in the last few, and he's obviously looked really, really, really attacking and very good for United, and I think offers great value going forward. They've got some interesting fixtures too. I think it's Bournemouth and Wolves in the next 2, I think. So quite happy to have him in there, and would rather be starting him than the likes of Rodgers at the moment.
Yeah, I absolutely concur. And I do wonder whether or not with Amarin's, 3 at the back, 3 centre-backs, was he just kind of figuring out where best to deploy folks? I've seen Bruno Fernandes play in the pivot as a 10. He's kind of been figuring that out. And it does feel to me like Ahmad is one of the few players in the United team who is interested in creating. And so I do wonder whether or not he will end up as one of those 10s behind the number 9. So yeah, I'm envious, man, to see him in there. And the whole of the team, right, Andrew? You and I were talking off camera, looking at your game week 17 composition. Looks super strong to me anyway. So do you want to just talk through your thoughts ahead of what transfer or transfers you could be looking to make for game week 17, Andrew? You've mentioned Arsenal already. Where would you be looking to improve this team?
Yeah, with 6.3 million in the bank, I've kind of got money, burning the back pocket. So do want to be using it and taking advantage of the fact that I have all those funds. And like I said, it's the defense that needs to be sorted out. I need Arsenal in there.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like a week where you absolutely have to have an Arsenal defender. I think the away game against Crystal Palace is not an easy one.
No.
Palace have looked good. I think with Eze back too, there is that attacking threat again now. And they look like they're gelling a little bit more. So I'm a little bit apprehensive about bringing him in now and using the money on him. My other sort of option or someone I was looking at was either a Rodgers to Bruno Fernandes. Again, just those United sort of starting to click, and the fact that those next 2 fixtures, I really fancy them for a good few points in that one. The other option is going up to Jackson, as you mentioned earlier, from probably Vissa, just because there's a little bit more money I can save there in keeping João Pedro. But I don't see the need to get rid of Vissa this week, so I'm quite happy just to leave him there for that home game against Forest. He can absolutely return in that one. So a few options there. It's either attack a little bit more by going Bruno Fernandes, or be a little bit more pragmatic and just get an Arsenal defender in, knowing that I'm going to want them going forward, because Arsenal face Ipswich at home next week. So you absolutely want an Arsenal defender there. Probably want to be perfectly honest, going forward. And we'll see in some of the stats just how good Arsenal are starting to look. And I can't get away with not having Arsenal defense going forward. But like I say, it's a week where you don't absolutely have to have them just because of the fixture. So there is also the option of just saving that transfer and getting them in next week.
Yeah. Great thoughts, man. And we'll come on to the stats in just a moment, which I'm sure will help crystallise those thoughts as well. I do wonder whether or not, in terms of the forward line, it feels to me like transferring out a Brentford forward ahead of a home game would be a mistake, based on what you've described in terms of their effectiveness at home and how well he's done for you already. And you don't want to sell a forward before they play West Ham, I'm here to tell you. So yeah, that's definitely one to retain, I would suggest. There's one forward we didn't mention, Andrew. You mentioned Bruno Fernandes, not a name I was expecting to hear you discuss there. But does Rasmus Højlund interest you at all as well? I mean, it's not a player I know loads about, but seems to be the preferred option ahead of Xerxes playing as that number 9 in the system, right? Andrew, would you be someone that you'd recommend other FPL managers look at?
He has interested me. I think he's about 7.3 or so, if I remember correctly, just because I did have a look at him. I think with him, I just want to know that his starts are a little bit more secure. He's obviously been sharing a fair bit of game time with and know that he's assured of a few more minutes. But he is really exciting. And he also just looks like he's, starting to gel. I think the way Amram plays suits him a lot better. And having those players around him like Bruno Fernandes and Ahmed. So, yeah, really, I'm keen on him and we'll be keeping an eye on him. He's not someone I have plans to bring in immediately, but quite happy to consider him going forward.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, it's going to be interesting to see how you can spend that huge chunk of change. Surely a roll can't happen with 6.3 million in the bank, Andrew. We'll have to see. But hopefully the next slide and our stats roundup will help you get to your decision. Okay, guys, so just a reminder here, we are looking at stats over the last 4 games, and these are conditional on the players having played at least 180 minutes. I like starting with the team metric, bottom right-hand corner there, expected goals conceded. You've bigged up Arsenal defence throughout the video. Andrew, look at that compared to their peers. They are the only team to be under half a goal conceded per game, 0.44 over the last 4. The standout, right, Andrew? Any other teams you're looking at there? We mentioned off camera, seeing Man United creep into this defensive metric feels like the first time I've said that in about 5 years. But yeah, do you think there's any opportunity to potentially widen the net, and Arsenal being one team, but possibly Man United as well? What do you think as a United fan? Are they shoring things up?
Yeah, look, I think they're worth considering. It's hard to trust United defensively because you just never know when they're going to capitulate.
Right.
I wouldn't be spending money on the likes of Dallo, for example, who's 5.2 million. If I was going to have a look at a Man United defender, it would be because I'm looking for someone as cheap as possible and is putting up fairly good numbers. So your Dallos and your Deluxe are just a little bit too expensive and perhaps don't hold the value I'd like to see from United. But you do have the likes of Martinez, is only 4.4 and is now sort of back in the team. He started the last 2 games. And, the fixtures going forward are pretty decent with Bournemouth, Wolves. They've got 2 slightly tougher games next against Newcastle and Liverpool. But after that, it's Southampton, Brighton, Fulham, Palace. So there's opportunities for clean sheets there. So definitely worth considering.
Yeah.
And it's a team above them that I think we need to be looking at sort of from next week in Palace. Eze is obviously being looked at closely now from game week 18 from an attacking point of view because of the fixtures they have. But, Munoz there is hold just as much attacking threat, to be perfectly honest. So very keen to see whether I can perhaps fit him into from not this game week, obviously, with Arsenal, but from the following game week, they look like they've got a nice run of fixtures ahead.
They do, and Munoz, finding his way into the top 5 over expected FPL points via the fantasyfootballfix.com tools that we have available over on the website, guys, as well. It seems to present a compelling case. The only team under a goal conceded other than Arsenal. So the Arsenal guys then, Andrew, you kind of talked about them as a collective. Who's standing out? Would you just pay the big money and get Gabriel in as that sort of aerial threat, or would you be looking at a Jurrien Timber or elsewhere? What's your actual thought? So you've got an awful lot of money, I guess, available. Would you just pay the big bucks?
I think I'm just paying the big bucks. It's just, defense is a position where I'd prefer to be spending the least transfers during the season as I can, and obviously trying to pick the right attackers based on the fixtures that they have coming up, and that's where I prefer to use my transfers. So I think it's worth just getting in someone that should always be in the side. And he obviously, up until not starting, and Saliba, being the one who ended up picking up the attacking numbers and the attacking points while he was off, I think Gabriel is probably going to be the one I go for, just simply because he was the one who, before Saliba obviously picked up all of that, was the one that made the most sense, essentially.
Yeah, no, I do agree, and he seems to stand out when you apply the longer lens. Like I say, I've been looking at the stats throughout this week. When you apply the longer lens, he is the standout and does seem to justify the money. If we look elsewhere on these charts we've got here, we mentioned Cole Palmer briefly before in terms of your captain for Game Week 16. He's retained the armband into Game Week 17. These numbers seem to suggest a pretty compelling case for you to do that. Look at that, top of expected FPL points. He's top of shots. He's top of XG. He's top of attempted assists. He's in the shots in the box. What a player, right, Andrew? Do we think he's FPL gold now and actually someone that we can trust with the captaincy fixture irrespective?
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't have him, get him.
Yeah,
I think it's really that simple. I think with Haaland being and City as a whole just being off the game so big at the moment, it makes sense to obviously just use all of that budget in the midfield when we're looking at our attack, and you might as well be spending that on those big three, and then just use those other 5 positions to move things around and look for the opportunities.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look, the numbers, the eye test and the numbers just point directly to him. So no point in not going with him, in my opinion.
Here, what a boy! Look, I mean, there's some strange names on here, Andrew. When we were pulling this together, actually, I think we've not some names that we've talked about. Do you see any sort of diamonds in the rough here that we kind of haven't? We're sleeping on. I mean, Maduiki's been in here a long time. He never kind of gets mentioned in these videos. I know we've talked around Jackson, but we haven't mentioned Kluivert. So Semenyo seems to be always great in the underlyings as well. I mean, anybody else? Mitoma's there, Kudos. Is there anyone here that you're sort of thinking, do you know what, I was thinking about him and the numbers back it up, or are these ones that is actually presenting, a bit of a red herring? What do you think looking at these?
Yeah, Kluivert was the one who kind of jumped out at me there. I didn't realize it'd be so far up in these tables. I think the majority of that's going to come from the Wolves game, where he scored 3 penalties in that one, didn't
he
he?
did,
So, his XG there was literally like 2.5 or something ridiculous. So I think the majority of the numbers probably come from that game in Game Week 13 against Wolves. He hasn't returned in the next 3, so I think there is a little bit of pinch of salt that we need to take with his numbers there. Having looked at the rest of them, yeah, Semenyo, he's been up there with the shots the whole season. The problem is I don't usually look at shots as an indicator of whether I should be bringing people in. I mean, the sort of touches in the box is a little bit more of a, an indication as to what the positioning is like, and it's. Shots don't obviously tell the full story just with regards to the composure of a player. I think of someone like Garnacho, who's got the composure of an epileptic elephant. He just, the decision making and it's just, and Semenyo kind of strikes me as someone a little bit similar. So I haven't been in a huge rush to get him in. Yeah. He is obviously putting up the attacking numbers, but I've been a little bit cool on him, to be honest. Kluivert was the one who sort of stood out, obviously, with the expected points and the shot. Not in the shots. He was X goals, wasn't he?
Yes, that's right.
But like I said, it's probably that Wolves game that's skewing things a little bit with him there.
I like it. Maybe we can look to change this and move shots and bring in another metric, like you say, average touches in the box, something like that could be something that would be of more interest to managers. And maybe actually what we're seeing here, because his name does not feature in shots in the box, maybe these are all speculative efforts that actually aren't going to trouble the goalkeeper even if they're on target. So there could be something in that we will look to change into the course of the second half of the season. I like it. All right, cool. Andrew, it's been a pleasure. I should just say, guys, real apologies if you have struggled with the audio and or visuals. We have had some gremlins in the technology today that I've been trying to battle with whilst recording, but hopefully you've still been able to stay the course and have enjoyed the video and hearing Andrew's thoughts. Andrew, apologies to you as well if you've struggled to hear me throughout any of the video, but hopefully it's been okay. Anything else you want to cover for the guys ahead of Game Week 17?
No, I think, from a personal point of view, it's just about kind of starting to be a little bit more pragmatic, and there's it's already paid dividends in the last game week. 100k green arrow there. It's not massive, but it's a step in the right direction,
Oh yeah,
and that's me making a decision to go a little bit more template. So if going a little bit more template means that you're getting green arrows, there's really nothing wrong with that, is there? So
definitely.
wouldn't stress too much about bringing in players that it seems like everyone is wanting at the moment. They're wanting them for a reason.
Absolutely, mate. Yeah, great thoughts and a nice way to round it off. Guys, I do hope you've enjoyed the video. I do hope you've enjoyed the series for the first part of this season. We won't be back with you next week because it's going to be festive time and festive fixtures will follow in due course. Hopefully, we'll squeeze in one more video before the turn of the year. And I'll talk to you if not in the new year. So, guys, have a great Christmas. Thanks, Andrew, very much for your time for this video and the ones that preceded it as well. Good luck to you. Good luck to you all as well ahead of Game Week 17, guys. And I'll see you all soon. Take care. Bye bye.